Hello and welcome. So, let us resume with where we left yesterday. We were discussing secularism. We saw the essential features, a brief introduction about what secularism is. Now, there is an attached chapter, the chapter 2, which discusses in some more details what Indian secularism stands for and what are the remaining features that we have not seen yesterday. So, let us try to recall what we have discussed yesterday, that Indian secularism essentially imply that religion and state will be different. So, how it would be different and what are the other provisions is what we'll see today. Like we have seen it yesterday itself that Indian constitution allows individuals the freedom to live by their religious beliefs. So, because of this religious beliefs, me and you can practice whatever religion we follow, we choose to follow, and it is also like that we are born into a religion. We may choose not to follow that religion. We can it's written here, there are most likely to be one group which will be majority. So we have seen that tyranny of majority, which said that the Hindus are in majority in India, and even in some states where Hindus are not accorded the status of majority, like in Northeast, and when Kashmir was a state, there also Hindus are not treated as minority despite the PIL that was filed last year. So till date, the status is that Hindus are majority in India, despite being uh, in some states, despite they not being majority. The numerical strength is not in their favor. Still, on a whole, they are treated as majority. So the majority should not, threaten the minorities. So this is why Indian secularism makes these provisions where minority rights, religious minority rights, are remain protected, and there must not be a day where the religious majority overasserts itself and engulfs the minority. So it also gives freedom to individuals to exit from their religion. You are born into a religion, you can choose not to follow that religion, embrace another religion, you can convert. So conversion is a constitutional right. However, there is a caveat attached. It must be voluntary, and there must not be force or deceit. Deceit is dhokha. Deceit must not be used. So, if you are impressed by some other religion, you can convert from the religion into which you were born to a particular religion, but it not be under the influence of money or fear or something that is unscientific. That if you convert, then so and so thing, good things will happen to you. Your disease will be cured. So these will be counted under deceit. That is not allowed. Again, you have the freedom to interpret your religious teachings differently. It's not like that you just have to abide by what one says. You can interpret it the way you want. And again, we shall see here that some examples are given. Celebration of religious festivals. So remember your school days when you started your morning prayer, the assembly. Now we all used to pray in our schools. In government schools, you cannot do prayers like it's written here. Government school cannot promote any one religion either in their morning prayers or through religious celebration. This rule does not apply to private schools. And any uh, anyone like state, there is one line which I wanted you all to read and tell you something more about that. In India, government space like law courts, police station, government schools, and offices are not supposed to display or promote any one religion. That's a fact. And you won't see images of any god or goddess in police thana or in any court or in any other government offices. Having said this, the motto of Supreme Court of India, you can check it on the Supreme Court website. It says, Yato dharmos tato jaya. Now, this is a verse taken from Mahabharat. When Duryodhan was going to fight the war, he asked his mother, Gandhari, that bless us, O mother, so that we can defeat Pandavas. And she said, Yato dharmos tato jaya, which means wherever there is dharma, victory shall be there, which means you will not win. So that is where it is written on the Supreme Court, the motto, Yato dharmos tato jaya, taken from Mahabharat. Police stations. You know what is the motto of UP police? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. That this is a verse taken from Bhagavad Gita when Lord Krishna tells Arjun. So here we are reading in class 8 NCRT that government space like law courts and police station, and then I stated two facts to you, that one about the Indian Supreme Court, second about Indian police. If you see Indian Coast Guard, their motto is Vyam Raksham, again taken from Hindu Vedic text. So there is more to this discussion currently beyond the scope of current text that we are dealing with, but certainly we'll come back to it. We'll revisit this concept secularism, because what is written in class 8 NCRT is not the end of secularism. For the moment, let us confine ourselves to the text. And further, it says that Indian secularism works to prevent the domination listed earlier is through a strategy of intervention. What earlier they are telling about? There is a story where a Sikh is Sikh, Sardar. He is wearing a pagdi. All Sardars wear pagdi, and he is about to ride a bike with his friend in Delhi. So his friend says that please wear turban. Please wear a helmet. You are wearing a turban. If you don't wear helmet, then you will be penalized. You will be fined. He says, no, I'm a Sikh, so government cannot force me to wear helmet. I will wear pagdi because this turban, this pagdi is essential to my religious belief. So strategy of intervention comes here. Like how come Sikhs are allowed and others are not allowed? And to what extent state will intervene? Like Indian constitution bans untouchability. Article 17, we have seen it many times. Despite some people have misinterpreted the religious text and justified untouchability, and then they have quoted those texts. State of India said, despite such texts, we will not allow this. So a state is intervening. Okay, state is intervening and banning untouchability by the constitution itself. So Indian constitution grants the right to religious communities to set up their own schools and colleges. This can be done here, that religious communities can set up their own schools and colleges and propagate and promote their own faith. Now, let us see here that what is the how it is different from the American secularism. The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution prohibits the legislature from making laws respecting an establishment of religion, or that prohibits the free exercise of religion, which means there shall not be a law intervening into these two domains, respecting an establishment of religion or prohibit the free exercise of religion. Establishments here means that the legislature cannot declare any religion as the official religion, nor they can give preferential preference to one religion. Though in USA we have separation between state and religion, means that neither the state nor religion can interfere in the affair of one another. This we saw in the last lecture. I told you that Europe and USA were firmly under the grip of church during medieval times. USA was not even existing that time. USA is actually a 300-year-old phenomena. It's a land of migrants, the Red Indians, natives living there, and different Europeans who settled there, who were made to settle there by British. Now, there's a big story that you will study in world history when you will study American Revolution and American Civil War. For the time, you just need to know that America, as we know today, was not in shape 300 years ago. It was a land of migrant. Different Europeans were put there by the British imperial masters along, and they mixed with the native Red Indians. So that is what the composite culture, the great American dream comes from. It's called the land of migrants. So Europe, I said, was under the influence of church. Church used to decide everything. Church used to take a call on every walks of life. So they wanted to get rid of it because church was responsible for most of the sins, most of the derogatory practices that were happening in Europe. That is why Europe decided that church will remain in separate domain, and politics and religion shall not be mixed. However, in India, the situation was completely different. I told you yesterday that we were fighting imperialism and not religious domination. It differs from dominant understanding of secularism as practiced in USA, the Indian form, because unlike the strict separation between religion and state in American secularism, Indian secularism, the state can intervene in religious affairs. Article 17 is an example, abolishing untouchability, where Indian state is intervening even if religious texts are justifying it. Of course, the contaminated religious texts. So any interference in religion by state has to be based on ideas laid out in the constitution. Indian state is secular and works in various ways. The Indian community is fundamental, right? That are based on these secular principles. However, this is not to say that there is no violation of these rights in Indian society. So this is a complete our summary of the module of secularism. And if you read it, if you listen to these two lectures which we had yesterday and today, you will get a broad understanding of what secularism in class 8 political science books tells us. As I told you, there is more to this which will come in due course of time. So for the moment, let us stop here and move to the next one, the third chapter that we are to deal with here. That is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha Parliament and the making of law. Very important thing, very important thing, and it's entirely conceptual thing. And we don't understand it here. That's the Sansad Bhavan, the Parliament of India. Whenever you come to Delhi, please visit this. It's a place that you will feel like yes, the laws are made here, and entire India looks up to it. So it started from Government of India Act. Now we will study a series of GOI acts in history. Government of India Act 1919, 1919, 1925. For some elected representation, which means that now Indians can take part in elections to the provincial assemblies or central assemblies, assembly that was held under England in India to choose representatives in India. So that was the first time, 1909. Very important line for prelims. Now, takeoff point for democracy is the idea of consent. That is the desire, approval, and participation of people. It is the decision of people that creates a democratic government and decides about its functioning. The basic idea in this kind of democracy is that the individual or the citizen is the most important person, and that in principle the government as well as other public institutions need to have the trust of these citizens. So how do individuals give approval to government? By voting for them. One way of doing so is through election. Yes, you voted a government and the government will rule over. Now this is a very old picture. Elephant is carrying. These are people related to election, electoral officers who are carrying the ballot machines. Earlier there was a postal ballot, and they are going for the counting. This is how it was done on elephant backs in some part of India, the remote areas. So that's the glorious parliament building, the two houses, the Lok Sabha or the lower house, and the Rajya Sabha or the upper house. So what is the role of the parliament? And this is the 2019 17th Lok Sabha election. You see the numero uno Bharatiya Janata Party is on 303 seats, the ruling party. Second is Congress with 52 seats. Now there is not even a match. So BJP currently has captured the political spectrum of India. It has reshaped the political narrative, and it is way ahead of all. You see, second is 52, almost 1/6. This is the grand old party. So again, these are stuffs that we have to discuss in the optional. I'm not going into all that. To how is the government elected? 543 seats plus 2 Anglo-Indian Lok Sabha. Now, this provision has been done away with. Your books here are not updated, but please, you can just write a note if you are writing it here or you have the NCERT. Just put a sticky note here. You all know how to use sticky note, I guess. Here, you can use the sticky note here, and we will write here Anglo-Indian 2 seats. We shall use these things. This will make our learning very easy. Just do this. So next time when you read it, you see here is a, and you can do that. I hope you know how to use sticky note. Any one of you don't know, I just showed you how to use that. So since independence, this was being done. Two Anglo-Indians were nominated. They were not elected. They did not fight elections. They were elected by the President of India. 2019, this provision was ended. So 543 majority, 543 by 2 plus 1, that is 272. BJP is on 303. So what is the function of parliament? What is the function of Lok Sabha? Now parliament is divided into two houses. Now let us pay attention to it, because in books, in your all books, not even 8th or another other NCRTs or even advanced texts, it is at scattered places. I'm trying to sum it up here. Parliament is divided into two parts: Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha 543 seats, Rajya Sabha currently 245 seats. So actually, it can be 250 in Rajya Sabha. Currently, it is having 245 or 248. I'm confused between these two numbers. Maximum limit would be 250 in Rajya Sabha. 543 in Lok Sabha. Anglo-Indians are gone. 272 you need to run a government, to make the government, to be the government of India. Now, what is Rajya Sabha? Whenever election happens, entire India is divided into 543 constituencies. I have given you this example. Your city Hyderabad has an MP, Mr. Owaisi. Delhi has 7 MPs, because Delhi is bigger than your uh, your city Hyderabad. So similarly, Rajya Sabha. Now, what is Rajya Sabha? There are no direct elections. Every state has a fixed seat in Rajya Sabha. I'm repeating it. Please listen to this attentively. Every state or UT, Union Territory, which has a legislature. Now only two UTs have legislature, Delhi and Puducherry. Third one would be Kashmir, but good 1 year, 1 year is left, I guess, because of lockdown. Delimitation Commission is taking its own time to give legislative assembly to Jammu Kashmir. So currently only two have. So all the states and two UTs having assemblies have representation in Rajya Sabha. Now that is entirely based on the population of that state. Therefore, Uttar Pradesh, the most populous state of India, has 31 Rajya Sabha seats. Okay. Uttar Pradesh has the highest Lok Sabha seat as well, 80 seats. So 80 seats and then 31 Rajya Sabha seats. Now, how would these 31 Rajya Sabha seats be filled from UP to Rajya Sabha? Like 80 seats in Lok Sabha, so whoever wins, like elections will be fought, Lok Sabha elections. These 80 seats are part of those 543 seats in Lok Sabha. But 31 seats to Rajya Sabha, how it will be filled? That will depend on UP Assembly. Now try to understand this. UP has an assembly, Vidhan Sabha. Yogi Adityanath ji is the chief minister because his party BJP of 403 Vidhan Sabha seat won more than 300 seats. Okay, BJP in UP of total 403 Vidhan Sabha seats. In Lok Sabha, UP has 80, in Rajya Sabha 31, in Vidhan Sabha 403. BJP won more than 300. Yogi Adityanath became chief minister. Now, based on that performance, those 31 seats will be filled from UP, which means whoever is having a majority in Vidhan Sabha will be having a majority in Rajya Sabha from that state. To put it mathematically, uh, 31 Rajya Sabha seats, total 403 Vidhan Sabha seats. BJP gets 300 plus, so out of 31, at least 25 seats will belong to BJP. It's simple ratio and proportion. I hope you understood this. If not, I'll revisit this. Don't worry about that. So, what is the purpose of Rajya Sabha? It keeps a check on the Lok Sabha, and it makes sure that our government, which is having majority in Lok Sabha, does not take very hasty decisions because they are having majority. So there will be a check by Rajya Sabha. The bills will have to be passed jointly. There are some exceptions which we will see later on. So most important function of Lok Sabha is to select the executive. Executive, Prime Minister, President. Of course, President depends on the ruling party. So they chose the executive. And executive is often what we have in mind when we use the term government. Yes. Prime Minister of India is the leader of the ruling party in Lok Sabha. Now, again, we have to be very careful. You might add a sticky note here that Dr. Manmohan Singh was from Rajya Sabha And here we are reading Prime Minister of India is the leader of ruling party in Lok Sabha. Entire 10 years he was from Rajya Sabha. He was a Rajya Sabha candidate from Assam. So he was not even a member of Lok Sabha. He cannot be the leader of ruling party in Lok Sabha. Okay, so please remember this. See, these are very basic texts. But when I teach them to you, I have the larger picture in mind. I know don't have to appear for standard 8th exam. You have to appear for UPSC. That is why I keep adding these things when we are learning from NCRTs, because anyhow you have to know those things. So then you don't because you should not have that impression that in NCRTs we learned this and now you are telling us this. This is for 8th standard students. You may add a sticky note here that despite uh, Dr. Manmohan Singh being from Rajya Sabha, he was the Prime Minister. So this line is not 100% true, is what I want to tell you. Now, moving ahead, the Rajya Sabha can also initiate legislation and a bill is required to pass through Rajya Sabha in order to become a law. Yes. Now, lawmaking is a very technical process that is not given here. I'm not going to explain it here. Just you need to know that a bill, what is a bill? Bill is a proposed legislation. To make a law, government brings a bill. When this bill is passed in Lok Sabha and in Rajya Sabha, it can be either ways, or in Rajya Sabha and then in Lok Sabha, then it becomes an act. Act is law. So for a bill to become a law, it has to be passed in both houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. This is where Rajya Sabha comes into picture, that any government having majority in Lok Sabha should not pass such bills that undermines the democracy. So Rajya Sabha will keep a check. Again, we'll see these things in very details. Now, there are some bills who do not require consent of Rajya Sabha. Money bill, in due course of time, will come to these discussions. Parliament while in session begins with a question hour. Again, Lok Sabha begins with question hour. Rajya Sabha will have 0 hour. This provision was recently introduced. Mr. Hamid Ansari was the Vice President of India, and Vice President of India is the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. So under his tenure, this change was brought, which we shall see when we will finish NCRTs. So this is what, who are the people in Parliament? Parliament now has more and more people from different background, and you see the voter turnout is given here. Highest number of voter turnout we have in 2019 elections, 1767%. So you see, it's increasing from 2009 to 15. It's a very good sign, it's an encouraging sign that people are turning out in more numbers to vote. We all should vote, and it should be somewhere around 75-80%, which I think will be achieved in coming elections. So representative democracy cannot produce a perfect reflection of society. There is a relation that when interest and experience separate us, it is important to ensure that communities that have been historically marginalized are given adequate representation. There is a provision for SC and STs in Lok Sabha and Assembly elections. With this in mind, some seats are reserved in Parliament for SC and ST. Now, what does it mean? It means that there are some seats from where only an SC can contest election. I wish I could give you example of your state, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, but I don't know which seats are reserved. I'll give you example from my state, Bihar. There's this place called Hajipur. It was the constituency of Mr. Ram Vilas Paswan, a very senior politician. You must have heard his name. His son Chirag Paswan contests from Jamui. Jamui is another place in Bihar, a very far-flung place from the capital Patna. Now, both these constituencies are reserved constituencies. How is a constituency termed as reserved? When the scheduled caste population living there is maximum, is in majority. There can be OBCs, there can be generals, but then the scheduled caste is having the highest number. Then that constituency turns into reserved constituency. Only a SC can fight election from there. Now, same provision applies to STs also, scheduled tribes. There's a difference between the two, which is on cards in next sessions. So this is what is given that, and then delimitation commission. There is this delimitation commission which ensures that, which, because migration happens, many people move from that place to another place, population grows. So because of these factors, before every election, it is ensured that whether to make sure that this constituency is reserved or the demography has changed. So if there has been a decrease in the number of scheduled caste, then it will not be this reserved constituency. If any district, if any constituency which was not a reserved constituency, now in 5 years from last election to the current election, maybe from 2014 to 2019, if the number of scheduled caste have increased in that particular area, then it will become a reserved constituency. It's all about numbers. Democracy is all about numbers. This is why these provisions have been inculcated, to make sure that these voices are heard, they are adequately represented, and they have an important say in the parliament, because parliament makes law for entire India. So the, these are the things that we have discussed here. Now, maybe today's session was quite lengthy, but then we have tried to understand so many things. And let me assure you that this is just a beginning. These things will be coming again and again. Lawmaking process, reserve constituencies, secularism. So this is just a basic introduction to all of you. Please try to understand these things. I would welcome your questions, and the questions that you write, when you write, I get an idea how much you have understood. So please keep sending it, and happy learning to all of you. See you very soon.